What's up, you guys? Welcome to today's video. As you can tell by the title, we're going to be comparing prisons around the world. So this is another video in my Prisons Around the World series, but in this video, we're going to be talking about a bunch of different countries all in one. If you guys are new here, hi, my name is Jess. I'm a person in long-term recovery who has in fact been to prison. It's not a flex, I'm just used to saying it. If you guys want to follow me on any other social media platform, TikTok, Instagram, Patreon, that's $2. It's only ever going to be $2. All of that is linked down below, as well as my vlog channel and my podcast. But without further ado, like dying to react to this, let's just kick this thing off. So the video that I'm going to be reacting to is on the channel titled Be Amazed, and it's comparing prisons around the world.
Think about prison. I bet most of you imagine endless iron bars, dark hallways, grim food, and an overwhelming sense of despair. But surprisingly, not all prisons around the world are the same. While some serve stomach-churning meals like this, others have a tasty and healthy-looking menu. And where this prison crams inmates into every available inch of space, this one has private cells that look more like a hotel. With that, it's time to see for yourself what some of the worst and best prisons around the world really look like. Crowding. Around the world, more than a staggering 10.74 million people are currently incarcerated. That's about the same amount of people that make up the entire population of the Czech Republic. And with a figure that high, it's hardly surprising to learn that many prisons are bursting at the seams with convicted criminals, although there are some that are well over capacity, like those of Latin America. The official capacity of prisons in Colombia, for example, were built to hold almost 81,000 inmates, but the actual population is well in excess of 118,000.
How can they put that many more people into this area? You really can't let some people go? Like, are they sleeping on top of each other?
In the most crammed prisons, 4-person cells are home to 8 or more prisoners, with new inmates forced to find room to sleep.
So I was in a county jail where it was 2-person cells and there were 4 of us in it. Oh my, you have to step over someone to go to the bathroom and you're going to the bathroom with their head like right there. Like there is no space. So that is so freaking horrible.
On floors, hallways, or even bathrooms. But just a short trek north in El Salvador, space is even more limited, with over 617 inmates.
Okay, but like, why are some of them so cute though?
For every 100,000 people in its population, the country boasts one of the largest prison population percentages in the world. It comes from the severe and successful crackdown that the country imposed on gang violence. Although, looking at their cramped prison conditions, it's not really worth bragging about. The country has the capacity to house just over 18,000 criminals, but the shocking system currently holds more than 38,000 inmates at over double capacity. Seriously unsanitary conditions and unbearable heat claim the lives of many inmates. And that was before the coronavirus pandemic. Though even El Salvador's prisons pale in comparison to Manila City Jail, famously known as the most crowded jail in the world. It was built to incarcerate a mere 1,100 inmates, but the country's war on drugs saw that figure rise to a bar-busting 6,300. That's almost 600% capacity.
Do we see how the war on drugs only leads to mass incarceration, more trauma, more suffering and pain? How do we combat pain and suffering that is the drug world? More pain and suffering, like, immediately now. Google's free, what the fuck?
And it means that in a single cell designed for 170 inmates to sleep in, a mind-blowing 700 of them dream of freedom. Ideally, the country's prison guidelines state that there should be 1 guard for every 7 inmates to keep the peace. But that ratio looks more like 1 guard for every 200 prisoners. While that will make plenty of Americans think twice before misbehaving abroad, the conditions back home aren't much better. With over 2 million people behind bars, the United States boasts the highest prison population on Earth.
The conditions back home are not much better than what we've seen. That's what they just said. Okay, I just wanted to emphasize that.
And while they just about have the resources to house them all, it's not exactly a spacious arrangement, with their prison capacity at a snug 99.8%.
But still, they are on bunks, they have blankets. It's not like they're sleeping on top of each other on the floor, on a dirty floor with nothing. So, just to be fair.
While all inmates get a bed, privacy in the most populated state penitentiaries, like California's San Quentin prison, looks like an extremely rare commodity.
I've lived in an open dorm like that, where it's like a gym with all those bunk beds. It's a lot. You're always on edge, and that's where PTSD comes from. You were always on edge because you don't know if someone's gonna hurt you, steal from you. You don't know if the guards are gonna come kick your bed and yell at you. You don't know if there's just gonna be a fight in the middle of the night, whether it involves you or not. You're constantly ready for something to happen. And when you live in survival mode like that, it causes a lot of trauma. Trust me, I'm diagnosed with trauma.
Back in the 2000s, when the US prisons were at their most overcrowded, they had to invest in serious space-saving measures. They crammed inmates into penitentiary gymnasiums, classrooms, and even clinics, and made them sleep on triple-stack bunk beds. Just imagine rolling over in your bed and falling off the top of one of those. What a nightmare. But not every prison in the world is crammed to the rafters, as you can see from the empty prisons of the Netherlands.
That building, that looks like a supermax. That's what we would call it here. And like, that looks crazy.
Since 2004, the Dutch have miraculously more than halved their prison population, thanks to the introduction of alternative sentencing programs. Dutch criminology researchers raised valid questions about how effective its prisons were at reducing crime. After sharing evidence that community service and electronic monitoring were in fact more effective at reducing crime, fewer offenders were sent to prison. As such, the whole of the Netherlands now has a prison population estimated around just 10,000, meaning it doesn't have enough inmates to fill all of its prisons. But instead of knocking them down, many have been repurposed into swanky-looking hotels. The rooms may have been upgraded, but the cell doors and steel walkways haven't been touched. As luxurious as it looks, I'm not sure I'd be able to get 40 winks in this clink.
It looks nice, but being there, having your freedom taken away, living in a cell, in a lot of ways, it doesn't really matter how nice it looks. You are still in prison. You are still kept there. There are still guards with radios and keys, and like, it's still prison, and you're still, going through a lot. Like, the loss of freedom should be the only punishment, but here in America, we're like, no, punish them, torture them. Should have thought about that before you broke the law. Like, no, these are human beings that are going to get out at some point, so stop traumatizing people. It just causes more issues. And if you cared about your tax dollars, you would care that we were not sending out broken, beaten, traumatized people out into society.
Food. You've probably heard plenty of horror stories about the perils of prison food. From being impossibly bland to pitiful portion sizes, getting behind bars is no cakewalk. And like the UK wasn't known for its terrible take on cuisine already, one prison in Warrington managed to make it worse. Back in 2019, an inmate from Her Majesty's Prison Risley took photos of his food using a camera phone and sent them out to the press. The fact that he'd gotten hold of a phone in prison was fairly disturbing.
We can get phones in prison, you just pay the guards.
But it wasn't as bad as the state of the food on his plate. Baked beans on plain pasta, soggy fish on fries, lashings of liver, and whatever this ungodly combination is, painted a pretty bleak picture of British prison cuisine. But in the UK, that food allowance per person per day is just over £2, about $2.70. And for that, prisoners are supposedly offered 3 square meals with a choice of fresh fruit and vegetables. I don't know if the Brits know this, but fries, sadly, don't count as one of your 5 a day. And yet, over the other side of the world in Japan, a standard prison meal couldn't look any healthier. Here, the incarcerated eat whole grain barley mixed with rice, vegetable dishes, miso soup, and nutrient-rich proteins like whole grilled fish.
Top notch. Again, these are human beings. Nutrition is important. Nutrition is important to our body. It's important to our mental health. Feeding them disgusting food that they have to choke down is bad for your mental health. It's bad for your physical health, your mental health. Like, oh my God.
These healthy and delicious-looking meals stem from Japan's incredibly low crime rate and small prison population, which is just 39 out of every 100,000 citizens. With fewer mouths to feed, this means more resources can be diverted to keeping prisoners healthy and focused on reforming their choices. Though there's no pleasing some inmates, as complaints have arisen about the quality of the prison's curry, underheated food, and elderly inmates being forced to peel their own oranges. Oh.
Bruh, what I would have given for miso soup.
God knows what they'd think if they had to swap places with British inmates for a day. Now, contrary to popular belief, Russian prisons don't just serve soup or borscht, although what they do serve instead doesn't sound much better. For a start, solid food is most definitely on the menu, though usually in the form of a bland porridge, cheap bread, unseasoned meat, and vegetables. While it sounds basic, there's plenty of it, with each prisoner reportedly receiving over 3,000 calories a day, all of which comes to just 64 rubles, about $1.17. Though it's hardly breaking the bank, Russian authorities have been trying to find ways to make their meals even cheaper. Prisons have been encouraged to produce their own food in small agricultural bubbles, allowing them to effectively farm their own meals, including meat, milk, and fish.
That would be something that the inmates would love to do. They'd love to have their own garden, grow their own vegetables and food. They would love to do that. You wouldn't want me to do that. I kill plants, like plants don't like me.
But if these countries show the good and bad of prison food, then the US really brings the ugly. Because jail and prison food is set at a state level, the quality varies wildly. Take, for instance, a typical breakfast and dinner in Georgia's Gordon County Jail. At $1.77 per meal, inmates receive around 2,800 calories per day, complete with fruit juice and cereal for breakfast, cornbread and beans for dinner, and even cake for dessert. Although there's no lunch served in between, so to get all those calories in such tiny trays, those meals are probably very sugary and fatty. Over in Idaho, the Department of Corrections has a slightly healthier looking approach. Though each meal served costs just $1, the dietary services of the penitentiary tries to incorporate healthier options, like salads, fresh fruit, and vegetables into prisoners' diets. But it doesn't take away from the pancakes, tacos, and spaghetti they're serving up as well. Looks like Idaho is the way to go. Now, Alabama, on the other hand, couldn't look less appealing if it tried. Back in 2009, breakfasts were a measly affair of half an egg, oatmeal, and a slice of bread. Lunch was 2 bologna sandwiches and a packet of chips, and dinner was just beans, some kind of meat, and yet more bread. It's hardly surprising that's all inmates got, seeing as each meal cost a staggeringly low 58 cents. Although, considering the prison chief at the time was caught pocketing $200,000 of the food budget for himself, it's a miracle Alabama's prisoners got to eat it all. But somehow, it gets much, much worse. In 2011, Texas cut $2.8 million out of its allotment for prison meals to make up for a budget shortfall. This involved a lot of substituting, like swapping milk for powdered milk, buns with white bread, and feeding inmates just twice a day at the weekends.
Twice a day? That is, when I tell you guys that inmates are starving, we are freaking starving. Because the food that they feed us, we have to choke down, and it is disgusting and horrible. And then, like, they don't feed us 3 meals a day in every facility or every day. It's just so hard. It's just, ugh. And if you say you should have thought about starvation before you broke the law, come on, dude. How am I supposed to get better if I can't take care of my own body?
And since lockdown, it's only gotten worse. Instead of gathering inmates in a cafeteria, they're each given a single paper bag containing all their food for the day. According to the inmates' reports, this can be as little as 3 sandwiches, cereal, and some corn dogs. Is anyone else's stomach rumbling just thinking about that? Well, they're not the only ones going hungry. Back in 2017, Alima Delic posted this tweet showcasing the tray of food she received at a jail in Florida. I'm not sure what looks worse, the sinister slop or the graying green beans. Were these guys trying to compete with Firefest to create the worst looking meal on the planet? But if that wasn't enough to make you evaluate your own life choices, take a look at what they serve the inmates across the US who really misbehave. This grim brick of food is a special management meal.
Special management meal? That means like they got in trouble and they have to eat that?
Which is a fancy way of saying punishment food. But more famously, it's known as the prison loaf.
Dude, Arkansas served us meat wad. That's what the menu that the prison wrote out for inmates. Meat wad. It looked like that. I mean, I don't think it had all that stuff in it. It just was like that gray color. Meat wad with cornbread, cold beans, and like water that was probably warm and dirty and had bacteria.
It's a tasteless mash of vegetables and starch that provides seriously disobedient inmates with all the nutrients they need 3 times a day, assuming they can keep it down. Ugh. That loaf may have been unappealing, but you know what does look tasty? Those like and subscribe buttons. Why not treat yourself and hit both of them, along with that delectable notification bell? Nice. Now, where was I? Cells. Most of you probably assume that all prison cells look the same, with bars, bunks, and terrifyingly exposed toilets. Though they do differ around the world, in the US, this is exactly what new inmates can expect. For those awaiting trial in the state of New York, a cell in the famous Rikers Island jail offers none of the comforts of home. In the general population, these tiny breeze block rooms are made for 1 inmate each and contain a toilet, a sink, a bed, and a heavily barred window. It's barely the bare necessities, but at least those in the general population can socialize with other inmates. Unfortunately, the same can't be said for those in supermax prisons like AdMax Florence, Colorado, because these prisons are designed to hold some of the most dangerous criminals in America.
I think prisons should just be for dangerous criminals that cannot be in society. I don't think we should just get rid of prisons. I think they are necessary. I just don't think that drug addicts that need treatment should be there. And our prison system is overflowing because of drugs. But dangerous terrorists and pedophiles and chomos and the Unabomber, like those people should be there. Chris Watts, fuck you, bro. You should be there.
Each inmate is assigned a single 7 by 12 foot room with an immovable bed, stool, and desk, all made out of concrete. They also have a shower set on a timer to prevent inmates flooding their cell.
This is really random, but I've used a lot of these pictures that they're pulling from Google in my TikTok videos.
And a toilet with an inbuilt sink. It's a lot to cram in, but it's specially designed to prevent moving the prisoners around the facility unnecessarily. Because the more they move around the penitentiary, the more they get to know its layout.
Because we're smart.
Which might prompt them to hatch an escape plan. As such, the vast majority of the 400 prisoners held here are in solitary confinement for up to 23 hours a day. But it could be so much worse, as proven by the existence of Russia's Black Dolphin facility. This federal penal colony houses more than around 700 of Russia's most dangerous criminals. Inmates are held in cells that have thick steel doors as well as bars separating the living space from the windows and the door. This effectively creates a cell within a cell, preventing them from rushing the guards at the doors or trying to escape through a window. And as an ironically named ground rule, none of these cells are located on the ground floor, which stops any prisoners from tunneling out of their life sentences. When they are permitted to leave their cells, they're bent over double by the guards, handcuffed, and frighteningly frog-marched out so that they can't really see where they're going. This is yet another precaution to prevent prisoners from mentally mapping the layout of the facility. Mother Russia really doesn't play around when it comes to national security. But not every maximum security prison insists on constant discomfort. Over in Norway, prisoners held in Skien prison have comparatively lavish-looking cells, complete with wooden furniture, curtains, ensuite bathrooms, and even electrical outputs for TV and game consoles.
What's crazy when I'm talking about prisons in this country and around the world is there is a very common thread in the countries that are doing it wrong. It's that the more punishment, torture, bad food, bad living conditions, and mistreatment, the higher that is, overcrowding, the higher the population is. But when we see countries that have low incarceration rates, it's the countries that are giving you humane living conditions, decent food, rehabilitation services, and they're not traumatizing you. He's talking about Norway in this last clip, and I filmed an entire video on prison in Norway, and they are just doing it right, and they're doing such a good job. The Norwegian model should be the standard when we think about prison. The American prison system doesn't work. Recidivism rates are upwards of 65, 70%. PTSD rates among inmates mirror that of combat war veterans. We have so much work to do when it comes to getting our prison system right. And the first thing we need to do is end the war on drugs so that we can incarcerate less people and use the resources that we already have to help the people that have release dates. What's one thing that you think we can do to help the prison system in our country? Let me know in the comment section down below, and I will leave a playlist of prisons around the world on the card up here if you want to see more. I'm gonna end today's video here. As always, I love you guys. Stay safe, stay in recovery, whatever that looks like to you. Don't break the law, I can teach you about prison. And I will see you guys in my next one.